Okay, so galley utilities first, since you're here. So for those who don't know me, my name is Joseph. I'm one of the Fleet Public Health supervisors. Some of you might know me already. I've been on different ships. But so like I said, this training is all about the basics. Now, let me just tell you, the reason why we're doing these public health trainings is because, bottom line, is we need to make sure, that the guests, whatever food that we serve to the guests and the crew, is safe. So what's that got to do with you? Because you're not preparing food. You are the ones preparing the equipment that makes the food. No? So that means, obviously, if the food needs to be safe, then the equipment used to prepare the food should also be safe. What are we protecting? What do we need to be safe for? What do we need to be safe for? It's not safe for. There are different risks. One is chemical risk, chemical contamination, which can be, sometimes maybe you have soap, maybe you have chemicals in the container, and then it mixes with the food. Then it can be a chemical contamination risk. It can also be a physical contamination risk, which it can be broken glass, hair, things like that. Another contamination would be biological. Biological is the main enemy here, because this is what is once it goes into the food it becomes uncontrollable. You cannot really control it. It multiplies. So that's what we're avoiding. Now, since I mentioned biological contamination, this would mean viruses, germs, bacteria, parasites, etc. And we call them all pathogens. When I mention pathogens, that means it's either a virus, a germ, a bacteria, whatever, that can cause illness. And one of those pathogens is the norovirus, which is not the only pathogen that we need to protect the guests from. We have different kinds of pathogens, and then they usually cause acute gastroenteritis, AGE, or GI. For those who have been a utility for a long while, who've been on the ship for a long while, they can call it GI, but we call it AGE. AGE is the sickness. That's why you got diarrhea, that's why you got vomiting, because of acute gastroenteritis. Now, the cause of this AGE is usually a pathogen. It can be different pathogens. It can be salmonella, it can be E. coli, it can be Norwalk-like virus, it can be Norwalk virus. But the most common is the Norwalk virus or the norovirus. Okay, this is the most common illness that you can find that is really contagious and can make everybody sick. Why is it important? If I get diarrhea, do I die? No, I don't die. But then, the most vulnerable people, like for example, children, small children, and then also old people, they can die because of dehydration. Diarrhea usually dehydrates our body, takes out the water. That's why when you get, who has had AGE here before? Anybody? Nobody yet? What? Okay, nobody wants to. Alright. So, if you get AGE, they give you a bottle of a Gatorade powder. Why Gatorade? Because you need to rehydrate yourself. Because once you go diarrhea, you're taking out the water from your body. Okay? So that's one cause. That's one of the symptoms. So norovirus spread through the fecal-oral route. Fecal-oral route, what does that mean? It comes from, the AGE sickness comes from something that comes out of your fecal route and from the mouth. If you vomit, for example, vomit and you have the virus in you, the virus multiplies so much that it's in the vomit and it can contaminate something else. For example, you're working, no? You're working in your area and then you vomited, and then it can contaminate the clean equipment. And that small particle of virus can make somebody sick right away. It's very, very contagious. Norovirus, very, very contagious. And then also, if for example you get diarrhea and you didn't wash your hands, then some fecal matter came into your hands and then you shake somebody's hand, and that hand that shook your hand, they placed it in his mouth, then he can get sick. So basically, what we're talking about here is anything that can go into your mouth contaminated with pathogen can make you sick. So basically, what we're protecting is making sure that anything that goes into your mouth is safe to eat. No? So that's the basic principle. What are the symptoms of AGE? Nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. So how do you prevent it? Isolation of ill persons. Now, how do we isolate ill persons? So when you have your first episode of diarrhea or vomiting, you need to report right away. Usually we give you a leeway of an allowance of 1 hour. If you are more than 1 hour, sometimes you're going to be getting a written warning because of that. So even if you're in the room, especially if you're a food handler, if you're in the room, call the medical center right away if you had your first episode of diarrhea or vomiting. And then they will isolate you. Well, same like COVID-19, they will put you in a room. Make sure that you stay in your room for 48 hours if you are a food handler, 24 hours if you're a non-food handler. So another way of prevention would be hand washing. So this sickness that I'm talking about, AGE, is one of the illnesses that we can encounter on board. One is COVID-19. No? That's COVID-19 is sort of different. It gets transmitted through a different route, through the air. Then you breathe it in to your nose, then you can get sick. The best protection of COVID-19 would be, one is obviously physical distancing, which you guys are not doing, and then also masking. Masking is the one that's important. So if you wear your mask properly, well fit, then it is not likely that you can breathe the air that is contaminated and then you might get sick. No. So that's the best line of defense. Now for AGE, for gastrointestinal illnesses, in order not to get that, one of the preventions would be hand washing. Hand washing is also good for COVID, but that's not the main thing. It's your mask. But for AGE, it would be hand washing. Because why hand washing? Because the hands is the one that touches a lot of stuff. And the hands are usually the ones that transfer that whatever contaminated thing that you touched into your mouth. Okay? So hand washing is very important. Then we'll talk about the hand washing later, what the proper hand washing technique is. There's disinfection. Obviously, if you for example have the virus on board or the illness on board, I mean, you can avoid it, no? You can prevent it from spreading, but it's still going to be there. Still going to be present somewhere. That's the reason why we need to kill it. And how do we kill it? By using disinfectant. What is the primary disinfectant that we have on board? Ecolox. No? Before it was chlorine and water. Now it's Ecolox or hypochlorous acid, which I'm going to be telling you later what it is. Or maybe explain to you how it works. So that's the acute gastroenteritis. Like I said, acute gastroenteritis is the sickness. Norovirus is the pathogen or the virus that causes AGE. But there are other pathogens that causes AGE, not only norovirus. So what do you do if you have AGE? You report. Sorry. What do you do if you have AGE? You report right away, within 1 hour. And then, when do you report? Within an hour. And how long are you going to be isolated? 48 hours. And what if your cabin mate is ill with AGE? If you have a cabin mate, if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or significant other, they are going to be called close contact. No, not close contact. Immediate contacts. And they are, as immediate contacts, that they are required to report to the medical center within 8 hours in order for the medical center to monitor them. Just like the close contact. Now, who has been a close contact here? Anybody has been a close contact? No? Not yet? Okay. Alright, so that's a close contact. The close contact, they call, and then they quarantine. But then for AGE, you don't quarantine an immediate contact. They just monitor you for 48 hours. So, like I said, the hands is the important thing in AGE prevention. Because the hands is the dirtiest part of our body, and this is what comes in contact with the mouth every time. So, aside from making sure that the hands are clean by washing your hands, you need to make sure that you have practicing good personal hygiene, because if you don't practice good personal hygiene, if you're dirty, then basically you have the germs in you, the pathogens in you, which can be transferred to another individual or into the food of somebody. Okay? So, these are the things that you need to do. You need to bathe daily, have clean uniform, jewelry. Jewelry, we're not allowed to wear jewelry if we're a food personnel. Jewelry in the hands and the wrist. For necklaces, that's fine. But then for the hands, no rings, no bracelets. The ring that is allowed is plain and smooth ring only. Wedding ring only is allowed. Okay? If you're not married, then you cannot wear the ring. Then also, no drinking, eating, and smoking in a food area. So the reason why we don't allow this is because when you do drinking, when you eat, you use your hands, and then you put the food or the glass in the mouth, then there is a likely chance that the hands come in contact with the mouth, then you can get sick. So that's the reason why we avoid that in a food area. So hand washing, what is the proper hand washing procedure? I think everybody here knows, because once you sign on a ship, that's one of the basics that is being taught of you. So you wash your hands for 20 seconds. So when do you start counting 20 seconds when you wash your hands? When do you start counting? Do you start counting when you start at the front, when you stand at the front of the hand washing? No, when? When you wet your hands with water? And when you start lathering your hands with soap and water. So 20 seconds of lathering your hands with soap and water, and then after that, you rinse it off thoroughly. Okay, so that's the proper way. Now, the hand washing sinks, we have designated hand washing sinks in the food area. You cannot just wash anywhere. You wash on a designated hand washing, and this one, hand washing sink should be convenient. You need to be able to go to a hand washing right away. That's the reason why in the galleys, the hand washings are within 25 feet. They cannot go over that. They cannot be farther than that. Also, it should be accessible. That's why we don't allow you to park your trolleys, park a garbage bin on the front, because it needs to be fully accessible. If I want to wash my hands, I can go there right away without touching anything. And then also hot water. There should be warm water or hot water, which is 100 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Because if it's too hot, then you don't have to. You're not going to be washing your hands for sure. But if it's too cold, then it's not going to be effective, because 100 to 120 would be the best ideal temperature when soap can break down soap and also grease in your hands and dirt in your hands. And then, of course, there should be paper towel, hand soap, and then a bin where you to throw the paper towel. So what's wrong with this? There's no bin. Obviously, of course not. You're not going to be throwing it here because that's a sink. This one is blocking the hand washing. This one is, you will notice that there's a brush there. That means somebody has been cleaning here, which you're not supposed to do. A hand washing is for hand washing only. Therefore, you cannot use it for any other purpose. So this is the proper way of hand washing. Wet hands with warm water. Apply soap and lather hands well. Rub hands for 20 seconds and then rinse thoroughly with warm water. And then dry hands with disposable towel. Now this disposable towel you can use to close the tap if the tap is not infrared. And you can use also the same paper towel to open, if you're in a toilet, to open the door. Open the door to that toilet to exit, and then you can throw that paper towel on a bin that is located by the exit of the toilet. We require a bin at the exit of the toilet every time. In order for you, so when you use that to open the door, then you can throw it inside that bin. Now, when are you going to be washing your hands? Like I said earlier, now we try to avoid, to make sure that anything that comes in contact with our mouth is clean and not contaminated. Therefore, anytime when you're doing something, or when you have a task that will involve something that will go into somebody else's mouth. It's not only your mouth, it's also the mouth of the guest or the crew, then you need to wash your hands. If you're preparing food, obviously, you need to wash your hands before you prepare food because you don't want that food to be contaminated and then eaten by the guest later on. Huh? So that's basically the principle. How about hand sanitizers? Have you noticed that we don't have hand sanitizers inside the galley? It's because we don't allow that inside the galleys. We encourage you to wash your hands every time. Now, on public areas, you will see hand sanitizers. When you do use hand sanitizers, make sure that you get plenty. Wet your hands totally, and then let it evaporate. Okay, don't wipe it with your maybe you have a handkerchief. No, don't wipe it with anything. Let it evaporate. That's the proper way of using a hand sanitizer. Now, aside from AGE and COVID, we have other sicknesses, other illnesses. So you got different symptoms for different illness. So if not only that, maybe you have allergies, you have sores or wounds, deep cut wounds, and infected cut wounds, and that's a no-no. You cannot work in a food area because you need to have your hands healed first. Now, what is jaundice? Anybody knows what jaundice is? Jaundice is, when your skin is turning yellow and you have your eyes turning yellow, just like this guy over here. So that means you're having a liver problem which can be also hepatitis. Okay, so that's jaundice. So you need to have yourself checked in the medical center. Now you cannot return to duty unless the medical center has cleared you. So even if you're done, even if we say, okay, you'll get isolated for 48 hours, it doesn't necessarily mean after 48 hours you go straight to your work. The doctor needs to clear you first before you go to work. Integrated pest management. So this is all about pests. IPM, we have an IPM program where we have certain procedures to ensure that the pests, that we don't have that pests don't go in the ship, and also that pests do not multiply, and then which will create a pest problem later on. So what are the things that we do? One is to make sure that we seal all outer openings. Has anybody been to the topsider? Topsider bar? Anybody have been there? Not yet? Okay, out by the topsider bar, you have an open door there by the bar, open door. And there's no barrier or anything, so there's an open door there. So any pest that is flying outside can go inside. So that one needs to be closed. No? Another thing is, for example, in the provisions. when you're bringing some fresh fruits, who knows, maybe there's a fly there on one of the boxes of the, for example, banana. It goes inside to the ship, and then later on, the fly wakes up, suddenly sees he's in a cruise ship. He goes to one corner or anywhere, and then he lays his eggs, and then they multiply. But one thing that you need to know about pests, they only multiply and survive because of food. Food. So if you see flies on your area, that means it's feeding on something else. It doesn't necessarily have to be a food from what the cooks prepare. It can be food debris from the drains. It can be mildew from underneath the tables. That's why sanitation is important. Sanitation and cleaning is important because these flies can multiply, can grow in there and multiply, and then create a problem to you guys because these are carriers of disease. They can carry one illness, one pathogen from one place to another. That's the reason why pest control is important. That's why we have an IPM program. Okay? So, like I said, we are preventing people from getting sick, from crew and guests getting sick. Mainly protecting them from foodborne illnesses. Foodborne illnesses are the illnesses that you get from food. Now, what are the causes of foodborne illnesses? Pathogens. I told you already pathogens. Right? It's a general name for viruses, germs, bacteria. So pathogens are the causes of foodborne illness. What's the difference between bacteria and viruses? Bacteria, to make it simple, bacteria multiplies without a host. That means if I have bacteria there in your seat, in 4 hours it will multiply in ideal conditions. It will multiply to 100,000 later in 4 hours. But for viruses, if there's a virus there in your seat, if there's only one virus, it's not going to multiply. It's going to stay as one. But once it goes inside your body, it can multiply to a lot. Okay, so that's basically the difference between a virus and a bacteria. By that, you will know, when we do inspections, when we do we call environmental assessment during an outbreak, we will know what is the cause of the outbreak, what is the preventive measures that we can do. Okay. So those are the characteristics of bacteria and viruses. Now, warewash operation. So for those who are for the utilities, warewash operations is one of the most important operations in a food safety program because basically what you're doing is you're turning the dirty stuff that have been used by the guests that are contaminated, you're turning it into clean. So you need to make sure that no pathogen escapes that warewashing process and then ends up in the clean shell. So that's your job, making sure that everything is clean before it goes into clean shell, and then before the cooks pick it up and then uses it to prepare food. Now, how do you set up the warewash setup? This is more of it should be a separate training because you have a lot of things to do there. You install the warewash machine. You install the parts, and then you verify the water sprays, and then you check the soap and rinse agent. Install curtains also. What is the purpose of the curtain? It's because so nobody can see inside. The purpose of that is to, for example, your wash compartment. You have a curtain there, you have a curtain here, you have a curtain here, so that the water from here does not go into the other compartment. And then you have a curtain there so that the water in here does not go into the other compartment. Plus, it traps the heat inside. So it doesn't have to, the machine doesn't have to work that much in order to reach certain temperatures of the water. So that's basically the the purpose of the curtain, what the curtain is. Oh, there's a handle. Oh, what's that? There's a cut handle. What happened there? Okay. So there. So this is a conveyor. There are different types of dishwash machines. One is the hood type. Hood type, under counter, the one underneath the counter, and then also this is a conveyor type. There's also a flight type. Flight type would be when you put a rack, like in the crew dishwash, that's a rack type. Rack type dishwash machine. The rack type multi-tank. When you say multi-tank, that means you got a lot of tanks. Okay, so there. Verify water spray. So you spray, make sure that the spray is good. Sometimes we see final rinse sprays that are weak, so that means it needs to be repaired. As you can see there, that's the proper. I think this is weak also. Anyway, check soap and rinse agent. Soap is very important. Soap, very important, because that's the one that removes whatever is the hard to remove dirt. A rinse agent. What's the rinse agent for? To make sure it dries quickly, so that you don't have to store the plate on the clean area wet. So there's the curtain. As you can see there, that's a spray. It's only not coming from the top, it's also coming from the bottom. And then the data plate. This is the Warewash machine data plate. Data plate, this gives you information on the temperature and the speed and the pressure of the required speed, temperature, and pressure of the dishwash machine. So if there's a pressure, if there's no pressure, that's fine, because you don't have a pressure gauge. On the old machines, they have a pressure gauge. So you need to write down the pressure requirement. But then on the newer machines, no pressure requirement anymore. It's only temperature and then the speed. This would be the minimum temperature of the wash tank. Whatever comes out there should be reaching this temperature. Rinse also. This one, this temperature, you compare it with the digital gauge, not the thermometer, the digital gauge. Digital gauge. And then this one would be the speed of the conveyor. Usually you don't adjust that. You don't adjust that. It's already it will have that kind of speed after a long while. Okay, so that's the machine data plate. As you can see, this one is for the smaller Warewash machines. See, wash cycle 29 seconds. Has anybody operated a hood type machine here? Is there anywhere a hood type machine located in your area? Specialties, huh? Specialty galleys. Okay, so when you operate it, there are two cycles. When you turn it on, one cycle turns on. After that, it stops, it drains, and then it turns back up again. The first cycle is the wash cycle. It should be 29 seconds or more. And the temperature of that water that comes out there would be 150 and above. After that second cycle, it stops and it drains the water. And then it runs again. That will be your rinse cycle or the final rinse cycle. The temperature of the water that comes out should be 180. And the cycle time should either be, depends on what is written, but if in here, it says 9 seconds. So it should be 9 seconds or more. Now, Warewash Evaluation. Yeah, this is the digital gauge. These are old. These are old machines. I think this one you can find still in the sky, Norwegian sky. You have that still. So this one is same like yours here. So what do we measure when we run the Warewash thermometer? When we use the delta trap, what are we measuring? The plate surface temperature. That means the temperature of the water when it hits the surface of the plate. So that's what's important. That should be 160 and above. So these are the requirements. 150 for one wash temperature, final rinse gauge. This is 180 here. This is for the data plate on the digital gauge on the dishwash machine, and then the plate temperature is 160. Okay, accuracy of the gauges. How do you measure the accuracy of the gauges? Sometimes you have to do a manual reading and compare the reading with the gauges so that there shouldn't be that much difference. Because if there's a big difference, that means it's either your thermometer is wrong or the gauge is wrong. Now, how can you check the wash cycle temperature? Wash cycle temperature is being checked. You have a digital gauge reading, and also you can also check. You can dip the thermometer into the wash tank, and you will get the wash cycle temperature, and shouldn't have a big difference. How can you check only the final rinse temperature? By isolating. This is how you check the wash temperature. See, they're using still the mercury thermometer, which has been discontinued for a long time already. There. So this is how you measure. That's how they measure the plate surface temperature before. But now you don't do that anymore. You use a stick. Okay. So you can see there. I think that's another method. Yeah, there's a stick here. So that's a stick method. So alarms. All of these machines have alarms. If it doesn't work properly, it's gonna give you an alarm. And then once there's an alarm, then you need to tell your supervisor right away. Okay? Okay, so there you can see sometimes you will have some alarms, visual or audible. Then you need to tell your supervisor. Warewashing procedures. When you wash in a warewash machine, you need to make sure that you do pre-washing first. Pre-washing means that you need to remove the excess dirt. Sometimes we need to even on the bigger ships, they would do a pre-washing with soap to remove everything, and then make sure that everything is clean before they load it into the machines. That would be the best thing because before it goes into the machine, everything is already been removed. So basically, the warewashing process would be just a finishing process of some sort. And then after pre-washing, racking. That's very important. You need to space it as far as allowed, so that it will be exposed to the spray inside the dishwash machine. If you put it close, then the spray will not be able to contact the rest of the surface of the utensil at the back, if you're going to be stacking them up together. And then after that, after you've wrapped it properly, when it goes out, you need to inspect it, make sure it's clean. And then after that, you need to air dry and then store it properly. How do you air dry? It needs to make sure that it's self-draining, upside down or maybe sideways, as long as it's draining. And then after that, proper storage, upside down and dry. So pre-washing, like that, racking. This one's too close, should be spaced more. This one also not the proper way to wash. You need to have a proper rack so that it doesn't fall over like this. This is wrong. You can see there are spaces there that the spray are not gonna reach. This one also the same. This one is wrong. Should be on a cutlery basket, and then only just a few, not overloaded, because if you overload it, it's not going to wash properly. See this one? This one with the eating side pointing up. Okay, cannot overload. This one would be fine a little bit, but then if it's more than this, it's going to be more overloaded, and you're not going to be able to wash it properly. So once you're done, so separation of clean and soil. That's basically what you're doing in your operation right now. All on that area is soiled. All on this area is clean. Equipment handling and storage, no bare hand contact. So when you're touching a clean plate, you need to make sure that you have gloves. Okay? You need to make sure that you don't touch the eating part. So this is the proper way. Very good, organized. This correct? This wrong. This one should be upside down. Manual washing, pot washing. We have warewashing. We have also the mechanical warewashing, and then we also have manual warewashing, where you use a 3-compartment sink. So there, you pre-rinse, you rinse, pre-rinse, wash, rinse, and then sanitize. Now, the most common mistake that we find here in sanitizing is some utility when they don't totally submerge the utensils. Sometimes when they have inspectors, what they do is they hold on to the equipment and then sanitize only, the bottom part. And then the inspector is going to ask, so what's the temperature supposed to be of the sanitizing sink? 171, sir. No? But then he doesn't realize that he already made a mistake. He didn't sanitize the pan correctly. Okay? So everything should be submerged inside. And then, as much as possible, and then also make sure that you check the temperature of this on a regular basis. Some people, some utility men, what they do is after they change the water, they sanitize right away. You need to reach 171 first before you start sanitizing. And then after that, you need to air dry the equipment. So that's manual warewashing, wash sink, rinse sink, sanitizing sink. If you don't have steam, then you can use chemicals. And what is the chemical that we're using? Of course, HOCl is, you cannot use HOCl. No? Can you get HOCl from a machine and then pour it into the sanitizing sink? Of course not. It's not practical. So we use bleach or chlorine. And what should be the concentration? Should be 100 ppm. For how many seconds? 7 seconds for chemical sanitizing. Oh, just at least 10 seconds in a chlorine solution. 10 seconds, 7 seconds. No? 7 seconds right now. Yeah, this is from the past. Okay, so this is the gauge. This is basically maybe a pot wash gauge, which is underneath the sanitizing platform, the sanitizing table. You can see there. So how do you check the time with your clock? This is the way to store. Equipment storage. So is this the way? How can you stack the items like this? Yes, you can, as long as it's dry. Okay, you can store it like this, as long as it's dry. Cleaning and sanitizing, what's great for?
Water.
Or wash with soap and water. This one, rinse water. With what? Warm water. This one is with 100 ppm chlorine solution or HOCl. Now, when you wash, you need to scrub with soap and water. That is to loosen the dirt. That is important. And then after that, rinse it with warm water. And then sanitize with 100 ppm. Now, everybody here knows how to test the concentration, correct? With chlorine tester. Anybody who doesn't know? Everybody knows. Okay, for sure. Because that's one of the basics that you need to know as a galley utility man. Now, where do you keep the sanitizing cloth? If you have a wet sanitizing cloth, do you leave it on the table? Or does it have to be in a sanitizing bucket? It should be inside the sanitizing bucket. Okay, so this one, is this something, there's something wrong with here with this one? Yes, there is. That's that cloth here. This is probably wet, and it should be in the sanitizing bucket. Now, this, when do you perform cleaning of the food areas? You perform the cleaning after the operation. So these 3 buckets that you have, sometimes I see 3 buckets on during operation. You cannot have that because you cannot clean while there is operation, especially if there is exposed food and exposed food contact surfaces. You can sanitize, and then afterwards, once the operation is done, then you can start cleaning. Okay, non-food contact surfaces, decks and deckheads. What was that? What are the cleaning chemicals approved for food areas and on food contact surfaces? All the chemicals from what are you using? Ecolab or Diversec? Ecolab, no? Yeah, Ecolab. These are all approved for food areas. So, I mean, all of those chemicals that you're using is approved. What chemicals can be stored in the galley? Can you store metal polish? You don't need. You cannot, because metal polish is not necessary for the operation. It's only used to polish and to make something shine, which we don't need. What we need is we need to clean and to sanitize, and only those chemicals used for cleaning and sanitizing is allowed. So this one, you need to be careful with this. Storing in food bottles, food containers. This one, is this correct? Sometimes this is wrong. It might spill somehow. This is the correct. I don't know if this is the correct, but that's not public health. That's more environmental. So mops should be hung somewhere, self-draining, without having this wetting the wall or the handle. Okay, so what do you do during a public health inspection? Okay, so let's not discuss that because it's not about inspections, it's not about scores, it's not about somebody inspecting your area. It's all about making sure that we protect the food and the food equipment that is used to prepare the food, so that later on the cooks can prepare safe food that can be served to the guests and also to the food. That's the bottom line. We're protecting the guest and then obviously yourself also. Okay, so that would be for the galley utility men. For the provision guys, we have one, but then it's going to be much shorter because we discussed already some of these things, which is also included in your slideshow. All right. Okay, for the galley utility men, you can go.